Hi guys. Well, here we are for the last class of the semester. So we're gonna do kind of a summary today. We have a special surprise for you at the end of the video. Be sure you take a look at that. Um, and we're going to just kind of review what we've done really over the whole year, both semesters. And I know some of you weren't here for the first semester, but that's okay. I've given you the book on cold case Christianity, and we've kind of talked about the same things both semester. But just to give you a quick review of what we've talked about. It's kind of a one-time package deal as you go. Remember I said at the beginning of the class, I don't expect you to remember everything that we've talked about in class. I don't expect you to remember the details of every argument you've heard for the existence of God, the Kalam cosmological argument, the moral argument, that sort of thing. I want you just to know that there are answers to questions. Probably one of the biggest things that I've seen going on in Christianity and in churches and so forth is people that sort of doubt their faith and can't find answers for it. And so when they can't find the answer, they give up on the faith. They say, if I can't find answers, there must not be answers, and that's a terrible mistake to make. If I can't find answers, there must not be answers. And if you can't find them because you say, well, I have a question, well, I didn't see an answer pop out of the air, so I guess there aren't answers. Not true. You have to look for answers sometimes, and sometimes it takes a while. But that's the point that I want to make, is that you now know more about Christian apologetics than I would dare say are most of the adults in your church, because not many people know a lot about apologetics. You've got the basics of it. I would encourage you to take more courses in apologetics whenever you can. I do it almost as a hobby. If I can find a good course in apologetics, usually up at Biola or somewhere, I'll take it. I love to learn more about this. It's just fascinating to me that how much evidence there is. And when I first became a Christian, I was not aware that there was much evidence at all. There was the Bible. The Bible was true. I believed it, and I believed in Jesus, and I accepted Jesus' grace to save me, and all was well. But at that time too, and it was kind of a different time back when I was growing up, there weren't that many people challenging Christianity. Christianity was supported a lot by the whole society. Now there's a lot of hostility towards Christianity for strange reasons, but there are. And so we have to, at least for ourselves, know that people that are saying things to us like, oh, your faith is just like believing in fairies or Easter bunnies or things like that. Just, come on, grow up, quit believing in God. You can only believe in things you can touch and feel and see, like science will tell you the answers to everything. Well, not true. I want you to know that, and I think you do know that now, and that means that you should be able to better resist people trying to tell you that your faith is useless, or resist falling into some situation where maybe you actually have some doubts yourself. I've had doubts. I still have doubts from time to time, and I think them through, and each time I come out on the good side of that there's answers for my doubts. My doubts don't mean that there is no God, that I shouldn't be a Christian. They typically mean the opposite, that my beliefs can stand up to doubts and get answered and move on. So it would help you with that, I think, and also to help maybe your friends and people who have really just not thought about this very much, who've just said, I know there's churches out there, and I know people go to churches, and they may have a wrong opinion, wrong idea about Christians. And we've talked about it a lot in class. A lot of atheists you'll find have become atheists, not because they've had a well thought out, I have studied the evidence, I've looked at everything, and there's just not enough there for me to believe there's a God. No, usually it's that somebody has hurt them. Even very sophisticated and world famous atheists that I've seen speak at places, they've got that hurt in there somewhere, and very little on the evidence side. They like to be condescending and poo-poo us as people. But when it comes to, let's talk about, I may not like you, you may not like me, that's not important. What's important is the evidence. Let's talk about that. They come up pretty short. But it's a tragedy, because they're going to miss out on salvation because of some incident that's occurred in their life, and they weren't able to get past it and look at the evidence and decide what they should really do with that evidence. So that's where we can help. You know how to find answers. You know where they are in most cases. And I'd really encourage you to reach out to people. We're going to talk about in the video today just kind of a review of everything we've covered and how to reach out to people in a nice and winsome way and help them find the truth. And again, it's as I've said to you, and I'll say it again in the video, you're not telling them what to believe. You're not telling them, hey, you got to be a Christian or else. You're just telling them, here's the evidence. Make up your own mind, but at least make up your mind knowing the truth. What a tragedy to make up your mind not knowing the truth, knowing some falsehood, and make up your mind on that. That would be truly a tragedy. So with that, let's get started in the review. Be sure you hang in till the end because there's a surprise for you there when we talk about grace. That's the subject for it. And I'll be back at the end of the video to check out with you one last time. Well, one of the things we've talked about in apologetics all year is that we are to love the Lord with all our heart, all our soul, all our strength, and with all our minds. Luke 10:27 tells us that. And apologetics is really sort of the with your mind part. And although the other parts play into it, to be sure, but with our mind. And some folks apparently have some objection to that and think, well, you shouldn't think too much about it. Just have faith. And it's kind of, to me, it's almost the opposite. If I think about it, I've got to have faith. If I have good reasons to believe what I believe, of course I'll have faith. I have faith in a lot of things, and it's all based on really good reason and good reason to have that faith. The key to that is that a lot of atheists will tell you in writing, and you'll see things published by them, and maybe even meet some that'll tell you this, that faith is nothing more than believing in something you don't know anything about, that you know it's not true, or that you really have no evidence for. And that's absolutely not true. I wouldn't want that kind of faith. I want the kind of faith that has lots of evidence for it, that there is good reason to believe that. I'm encouraged by that. I have faith, and I see reasons to have that faith, and I have more faith. So in any case, just wanted to remind us of that. That's one of the things you'll see coming from atheists and others maybe, that faith is just believing in fairy tales, believing in the Easter Bunny, things like that. Believing in God's pretty much the same thing. Absolutely not. As always, I ask you every week I've asked you if you had any conversations about Christianity or other people's faith. And I know most of you are kind of shy to share that in class. I appreciate those of you who have. But I would encourage you to continue to do this as you go out among your daily work. Just ask people questions. Questions are the best way to get conversations going. I found that if you go and try to tell people things, they might be a little resistant. If you ask them questions, they're generally flattered that you want to know something about them or what they think. So I encourage you, as you leave this course and go on for the rest of your life, please try to continue to have conversations with people about their faith and what they believe, and share with them why you believe what you believe. So just to kind of review some of the basics, on the first day of class, I think I asked this question: what are we doing here? Why study apologetics at all? And I gave you 3 reasons. One is to confirm that Christianity is true for ourselves. Everybody wonders that, I think, at some time. People talk about having doubts about their faith. That's normal. There's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong with that is to have a doubt and then not go try to find the answer to see if that doubt is well-founded or if it's really not worth having that doubt. And so we want to confirm that Christianity is true for ourselves. Secondly, to defend Christianity from attack. That's where the word apologetics comes from. Greek word apologia, that means to defend or to give an argument for. We want to defend Christianity. If someone is trashing our beliefs, and particularly if they're trashing them to someone who doesn't know the truth, doesn't know much about it, it's up to us to step in and try to defend that by way of giving good reasons why we have our faith and not let them put out false information. Also, to help others discover the truth of Christianity. Very similar to what I just said above. Help others understand that it's really true. I think there are a lot of people who think that Christianity, along with any other religion, is just kind of a personal preference, what you want to believe. And whatever you believe, that's true for you, and good on you, and I should leave you alone and not bother you with anything. So, not true. We want to have people understand that Christianity is in fact true. Great evidence for it. And then, as I mentioned, I think several times in class, it's up to you to draw your own conclusions. I've presented, for most of you, a full year, 2 semesters of evidence for the truth of Christianity. A few of you came in the second semester, but I think I've given you a pretty good review of that. But I want you to draw your own conclusions. I will never tell you what to believe. It's between you and God what you believe. It's not up to me. It's not up to me to tell you, to force you, to intimidate you to. So I want you to draw your own conclusions. But before you do that, I want you to seriously consider the evidence. from so many things that we've talked about: cosmology, science, physics, biochemistry, philosophy, and much more. So it's up to you to do with whatever you want with what you've learned in this class. Questions, again, is probably one of the best ways to learn the truth for yourself, not only as you do research and as you do study, but also to ask other people questions. As I said earlier, questions is something I think is just a marvelous way to get to know people, to share information with them, and to help maybe lead them to find the truth for themselves. And as we talked about before, every time you go out the front door, every time you leave the church, every time you leave school, think of it as not so much leaving as you're entering the world, and we're entering as servants to serve God, to bring his truth to people who desperately need it. Just a quick review of what we did in the class. We started out at the bottom with the foundation of truth. We talked about two kinds of truth. That there's subjective truth, and that's subject to the person saying the truth. In other words, I will say vanilla is the best ice cream in the world, and that's true for me because I think vanilla is the best ice cream in the world, but it's a subjective truth. That's not true for all people at all times and all places. It's true just for me. An objective truth is something like God exists. God exists whether I think he does or not. Gravity exists whether I like it or not, whether I may say I just don't believe in gravity, I don't believe in this. That's an objective truth, something that's true for all people at all times and all places. One thing to remember, we hear a lot about people say, I feel this, I feel that, I feel like I shouldn't do this, I feel like I should do this. And that's okay. You can have feelings, we all have feelings, but they're not truth. Just because you feel something, if somebody says, well, I feel like Christianity is really kind of fakey, you need to dig deeper in that. Why do you feel that way? What causes you to feel that way? Because we want to get at the truth. And we also talked about that a little truth, even true truth, a little of it can convey an erroneous impression. So you want to be sure that you hear and understand what people say, and vice versa, that they know. Remember the little video we looked at with Bud Abbott and Lou Costello about who's on first? And the question is, Lou's asking who's on first in a baseball game. And the answer is who. There is a man named Who on first base. And so when Costello says who's on first, Abbott says yes. And they get all frustrated into all sort of an argument because they just don't know what they're talking about. They are saying they're both trying to ask a serious question, and they're both answering it truthfully, but it's getting very confusing. So a little bit of truth. So, and of course, Bud never takes a lot of time to say there is a man called Mr. Who is on first base. Because it's a comedy routine, but it illustrates the point. Let me give you another illustration of this. I've told you things during the class. I've told you that I can fly, and we talked about what does that mean? Does it mean that I'm crazy and think I'm going to go up on the top of the school building, flap my arms, and fly around the schoolyard? Or does it mean I have a ticket on the airline that I'm going to fly to New York tonight? Or does it mean that I am a pilot? I am a pilot. I know how to fly an airplane. I go to the airport, strap on an airplane, and go flying. The last two are true. The first one is not. I can't fly by flapping my arms, but I have flown commercial airplanes, and I am a pilot. So again, they make clear what somebody's saying. The first time I said it, I can fly, and I kind of moved my arms when I said it, and I noticed the look on your faces was that this guy's nuts. I got to tell my mom about this guy. But again, we got to the truth of it. Let me give you another quick example of that that's just kind of a fun one that was really pretty startling to me. You all know what UFOs are, I think. UFO stands for Unidentified Flying Object. And this is what people normally think of them looking like, kind of a flying saucer for some reason. And there have been news stories over the years of things like flying saucers have been caught and found, and they crashed around Roswell, New Mexico. And there's a whole business there. You can go there and go to buy souvenirs and all that good stuff. They have photographs of UFOs that this is supposedly a UFO flying over the some area there. The deal is, though, a UFO, when people say UFO, usually what they think is spaceship, aliens, flying saucers. A UFO is really just an unidentified flying object. It means it's something that's flying and you don't know what it is. You might see something that you can't recognize, but you know it's flying and you can't identify it. Let me make a statement to you, and this is kind of along the lines of who's on first and I can fly. I once was part of, in Houston, when I was at Rice, I was once part of a very small group of people who actually launched a UFO. We launched a UFO, and to our surprise, the news media picked it up. A number of people saw it. It was on the radio. I was on the Rice campus as the UFO was airborne, and I saw a lady with about 3 kids in her back seat of her station wagon. She came ripping into the campus, really speeding quite a bit. And they were speeding down the road, and the kids were saying, and I was listening on the radio because I knew it was being reported that the UFO was near Rice. And the lady looked terrified, and the kids were saying, screaming at her, saying, "It's right behind us, it's right behind us." Well, it wasn't, but they were saying that. And that was one of the strangest experiences I've ever had in doing that. But so now, having said what I just said, you might think, my gosh, he was part of some secret project at a university, and a UFO landed there, and he helped relaunch it and get it back into space and help the aliens out. You can make up all kinds of stories from that because I didn't give you quite enough information. Let me show you a little more. I was at Rice teaching a course for high school students for summer school, something I did. And the course was in space science, and we decided to launch a weather balloon. This is a weather balloon. You can see the young man there with his back to us in the foreground. That's a little package there. In that package is a camera, and actually a video camera, and we were videoing the flight path of the balloon. We did get it back. It came down in a parachute. If you see the person there in the black pants and sort of the light shirt, that's me. Over to my right is the parachute. It folds up and then it deploys when the balloon bursts. And that's the Rice parking lot. And we launched the balloon. And for some reason, it was, I guess, in the evening or something. I don't know when it was exactly, but the sunlight caught it. People on the freeway began to see it and began to call the police, call the radio stations. And it caused quite a furor. But again, my point is that if I'm telling you the story that, yeah, I know all about UFOs. In fact, I was present once when a UFO lifted off from Earth and went into the sky. You might think something entirely different than what the story that I just told you, the truth of it, that we launched a weather balloon. So want to make sure that not only are we searching for the truth, but we want to make sure we know the context of the truth. What's the whole truth? You talk about in courtrooms, they want just the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. That's what we look for as we study the truth of Christianity as well as other religions. And our statement, one of my favorite statements, is the truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Let it loose. It'll defend itself. Truth is what we're after, though. If it's not true, it simply doesn't matter. Paul said if Jesus wasn't resurrected, our faith is in vain. If it wasn't true that Jesus did that, that's a unique claim in religions, as we found out as we studied some of the other religions, where if it really doesn't matter that some of the claims they make, or if even the founder never even lived, that's okay. The philosophy is still good, and they'll continue to practice that. So after we talked about the truth, we went back and talked about God, the existence of God. And from God, we talked about some of the arguments for God, some of the philosophical arguments, just to show, does this make sense? Is it logical? We talked about the Kalam cosmological argument. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. There's a spelling error. Doesn't matter now because the raffle's over. And therefore, the universe has a cause, and we believe that cause is God. We talked about a couple of weeks ago when we were studying Mormonism that if you ask the question of who made God, because this question might say, well, everything that begins to exist has a cause, so we're claiming God made the universe exist. Well, who made God? Well, God didn't begin to exist. God is eternal in our belief. And if you ask a Christian that, who made God, the answer would be he's eternal. He's not a created being. Interestingly enough, we discovered that if you ask a Mormon that question, they will probably come up with some sort of answer as to who created the God of this world, because they believe there are lots of gods of lots of worlds. So interesting little side note there for that. But again, that's just an argument for the existence of God. They exist. I don't expect you guys to wander around telling people, hey, you want to talk about the Kalam cosmological argument with your buds? No, not at all. I just want you to know that this exists. I want you to know that these arguments do exist. And then the next thing we discussed, sorry to go back and forth like this, was the Bible, the reliability of the Bible. There are just almost an embarrassment of manuscripts going back to the 1st century. There are also other writings by other people writing about the Bible and writing about the same stories, and they all come together, and they're not perfect, but they do not contradict each other. In other words, there may be a change from what one scribe did to the other. It might say Jesus said this, and the other one said Jesus was here and he said this, different things. But as far as the actual truth of what's being said in the Bible and the scriptures, they're remarkably well preserved from very early times, and validated also with other things like archaeological evidence and historical evidence by people who had no interest in saying one way or the other whether it's true or not. And then, of course, Jesus and the resurrection of Jesus. We've talked about the evidence for that. There is substantial evidence for that, and we covered that a lot in our books on the cold case Christianity with Detective Wallace, looking at the evidence for the truth of the arguments and what am I trying to say? The way that the disciples explained the stories. The stories do not match up 100%, but if they did, you would expect some sort of conspiracy. You'd expect somebody's just copying this. If three people see the same event, they'll all describe it slightly differently from their point of view. That's what he finds in the gospel accounts and throughout the Bible. Very good evidence for the Bible being accurately portrayed and also being true, portrayed true events. So with that, we've kind of built those blocks up. We've talked about the Kalam cosmological argument, the evidence for the reliability of the Bible and how we can believe it, and also the truth of the resurrection. We then talked a little bit about fallacies. A fallacy is something you need to be watching for in everything you do, not just in Christianity and in apologetics. It's a failure in reasoning which renders an argument invalid. And we talked about several. We talked about straw man, ad hominem, red herring, circular, snob appeal, assumptions, genetic, ads, and celebrities. One of the things that came to my mind the other day was ads and celebrities and how people just really sometimes want to follow a celebrity, follow a well-known person. And boy, if they do it, there must be something to it. Their opinion seems to weigh a lot more than just a regular guy on the street. And we've noticed lately some kind of high-profile Christians that have announced that they no longer believe in God. One most recently, I don't recall his name, but he was a band member. Grew up in a Christian home. I think his parents, his father was a pastor. Really robust band he had, Christian band that he was with. And he suddenly announced that he had so many questions and he couldn't get answers for them, and he no longer believed in God. And the sadness of that is that hopefully people won't look at that and say, wow, this guy, if anybody would know what's true, he would. Big-time Christian, if you will, playing in a band, hanging out with lots of Christians all the time. And if he doesn't believe in God, maybe I shouldn't believe in God. Well, first of all, not true. That's the fallacy of the celebrity thing. But also, just as an aside, it's interesting that I know there have been a couple of kind of high-profile Christians that have announced they no longer believe in God. Interesting that they say they no longer believe in God rather than say, I have evidence that there is no God, that I have good reason to believe there is no God. Their reasons in almost every case seem to be that they have questions and they weren't able to get answers to their questions. And that is truly a tragedy because there are answers to the questions. And I don't know if they're hanging out with people who have never thought about it. They just are Christians because they're Christians, because their family's Christian. My father was, a pastor. My father was, my parents went to church, so I went to church, so I'm a Christian. And suddenly I decided I just don't believe that stuff anymore. Did they ever know that it's really true? Did they ever know there is a ton of evidence for that? And that's what's a tragedy. And so I would hope that you and I, as we go out into the world and as we are there with the knowledge we have, that if someone does come up with something like that, that they don't believe because they can't get answers to questions, even if we can't answer the questions right then for them, help put them on the path that they can find them. We want to be discerning. We want to have the ability to judge well. We want to know what's true and what's not true. And to do that, we have to use our skills. One of them is a fallacy detector, if you will. If you see somebody making an argument that doesn't make sense, and you can a good red flag is if someone says something that is I feel this or I feel that or I believe this or I believe that. Make sure you dig down and understand why. Get the right answer. And as you're looking for answers, of course, there's a lot of bad places to look, a lot of good places to look. The internet's both good and bad. It's kind of like fire. It can warm you up and keep you warm, cook your food, and it can also burn you to death. Uh, be careful of that. Make sure that you go to reputable sources when you are Googling things. Remember, we had J. Warner Wallace, the gent that wrote Cold Case Christianity, again talking about evidence and how to think about evidence and how to analyze what you find. Make sure that you have things in the right perspective and that you're reaching the right conclusions. And one of the things that Jim said that I really like is, I'm not a Christian because it works for me. I had a life prior to Christianity that seemed to be working just fine, and my life as a Christian hasn't always been easy. I'm a Christian because it's true. I think that's the crux of this whole statement. I'm a Christian because it's true. I'm a Christian because I want to live in a way that reflects the truth. I'm a Christian because my high regard for the truth leaves me no alternative. I think that kind of says it all about what I've tried to convey to you in this class. Once we know it's true, what really choice do you have? Why would you not want to believe in a God that created the universe, a God that sent his son to die for us, a God that gives us grace that's just unbelievable? So that's kind of what we've covered in the class. Just kind of a quick review of the basics of Christianity. You all have an apologetic study Bible for students. I gave you all a copy of that. I want you to use that as maybe your first reference. If a question comes up, go there first. Look at who wrote the answer to that question and maybe look up more of the things that they said. So that would be an excellent source for you to go to. I want you also, when you're having the conversations with folks, I'd like to encourage you, as we've said a couple of times in class, play to win. Don't play not to lose. And by win, I don't mean win and trample the other person and beat them into submission and they say, okay, I give up, I'll be a Christian. But what I mean is be bold. Go out and give the arguments in a bold way, in a clear way. Playing not to lose would be, I see somebody that's having some questions and some struggle, and I won't talk to them. I don't want to get involved, because what if they ask me a question I can't answer? Or what if I give them my best arguments and they say, man, I don't like that. That's playing not to lose. I'd encourage you to play to win. And to help you do that, last week I sent you all a copy of the 10th anniversary edition, just came out a few months ago, of Tactics by Greg Kokel. He's the guy that I think you've seen the video of. He plays Detective Columbo, portrays him, and in his skit, and talks about, it's basically just a plan of how to discuss your Christian convictions. Can be used also for a lot of other things. Can be used in business or families or anything. A way to sort of get at the truth and do it in a winsome way without getting people upset with you, and allowing you to get your points across in a nice way. So I hope you'll take that book, keep it as a reference. That and the Apologetics Bible, keep them as references. I would encourage you to read Tactics cover to cover. There's also a lot of YouTube videos that Greg has up where he talks about various parts of the tactics and so forth. Keep in mind that there is a difference between assertions and arguments. An assertion is, I believe this. I believe that God exists, and that's an assertion. It happens to be true. But an argument would be, I believe God exists because there is a vast amount of evidence for that. There's logical evidence, the cosmological argument. There's recorded miracles. There's the Bible. There's the truth of Jesus being who he was. Jesus was God. That's some arguments with it. And arguments don't mean, hey, you're a dirtbag, get out of here. Argument means giving you good reasons for what we're saying. So an assertion is something like, he presented no evidence to support his assertions. He just asserts it. He just says it. He doesn't give it. An argument is a coherent series of reasons, statements, or facts intended to establish or support a point of view. That's what we want to do, is give good arguments. Let's take a quick side trip here. The world's full of illusions. We talk about that. The illusions that we've talked about in this talk here so far. We've talked about, who's on first. We talked about, can I fly? Did I really encounter aliens at Rice University? Things that, well, actually, I may have. I don't know. There were some strange folks there. But that's another story. Illustrate illusions, illusions of things like in class we've talked about the Church of Scientology. It says it's a church. Has something on the top of some of their buildings that looks like a church, although I think they think it's a starburst. It looks like a cross. So we want to be careful that the illusion is that they're a church. Someone not knowing much about anything might say, well, that's just another church. There's Methodist Church, Baptist churches, evangelical free churches. Hey, this is the Church of Scientology. I'll check this out. And I like the Scientology part because I like science. Maybe these guys are pretty smart. Same thing with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You would certainly think that that's about Jesus. That's the biblical Jesus that we think of, that the Bible talks about. It turns out it's not. So it's an illusion. Let me give you a quick thing to look at here, just as we do from time to time. I'm not going to do any magic today. Actually, at the end of this YouTube video, I will disappear. But other than that, there's no magic. Take a look at this and tell me what you see. What did you see? Most people look at that and say they saw a frog sitting on a lily pad of some sort. And if you rotate it, though, and I don't know what you may have seen, but as you rotate it, it now looks like a horse. You can see the horse, where it used to be the frog's head is now the horse's mouth. And let me show you both of them side by side. The same picture, rotated one way, looks like a frog. Rotated another way, looks like a horse. Another example of how you look at things sometimes to get at the truth. And the truth of this is it's both. It looks like two different things when it's rotated. That's the truth of this. Not that it is a frog and it is a horse. It's actually both at the same time. So in the second semester, we talked first about can science explain everything? And we wanted to make sure we understand science tells us what, but not why or who. It can tell us the what, tells us the numbers. Based on what we can measure and what we can see, science can tell us a lot. But it does not necessarily tell us why it's that way or who made it that way. We believe from the Bible in Psalm 19:1, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Almost every day when I go out and look at a sunset, I just have to sit there for a minute. And I feel like I'm in God's art gallery. That it's just another masterpiece. It's different colors, different shapes. Each one I just have to stop almost every evening and look at it and say, this is beautiful, Lord. Thank you. It reminds me of who you are. And then I realize how small the earth is in the universe. And I think, my goodness, what a magnificent God we have. And he has deemed it necessary or purposeful on his part to create this world for us, this earth, and make it so beautiful to us. So every time you see something like that, it does declare the glory of God. We talked about Case for a Creator. We use the student edition of Case for a Creator. There is a larger edition, more detail. I'd encourage you, if you want to learn more about that, the relation of science and religion. There are other books too, but this is one that's you'd probably be familiar with from some of the things you saw in the student edition. We talked about Charles Darwin, the guy that came up with what's called Darwinism, evolution by common descent. In other words, we all started as an amoeba, or our family life started as one little single-celled animal and has now evolved into all the things that we see, including humans. He wrote the book called The Origin of Species. I have read that cover to cover, and I must tell you that it's interesting, but to me, as I read it, it didn't say, my gosh, this is true, everything I've ever believed is wrong. He was very tentative in it. Many times he says things like, if it could be shown this, then this would be true. And if it could be found that the fossil record didn't support this, then it's not true. Well, the fossil record doesn't support it. But for some reason, people have jumped on this and said, this is great. We want to believe this. We want to believe in materialism. Science likes materialism. In other words, no supernatural, no God. They want to believe everything is just what you can see, feel, touch, and taste, if you will. That sort of the universe, I think we talked about before, there are those really smart scientists who will make claims like the universe created itself, that the laws of gravity would force the universe to create itself. Well, then where the laws of gravity come from? That's not from nothing, that's from something. And so, in any case, the origin of species has been a really major impact on evolution, to show that we just came out of the slime, and we trace our ancestry all the way back to non-life. Now, in Origin of Species, interestingly enough, Darwin does not say how life got started. He picks it up when once there is life, how it mutates and changes into other forms and that sort of thing. And we talked about two different kinds of evolution. There is what they call macroevolution and microevolution. Microevolution is when things like bacteria mutate to become resistant to antibacteria medicines, then that's a small mutation. That you could call that microevolution. But the point, and you can breed dogs, you can breed different kinds of horses, cattle, and that sort of thing. The point is, you always end up with a cow, a dog, a horse, whatever it is you're breeding, whatever it is sort of evolving in this microevolution. You might even say adapting more than evolving. You still have the same species. What Darwin is promoting is macroevolution, which means on a big scale that you would start out with a one animal, a fish, and eventually it becomes an elephant or a giraffe, something like that, through various chains. And to me, quite seriously, as I think about it in the most objective way I can, it just takes a lot more faith to believe Darwinism than Christianity. And as we talked about as well, there's evidence that's building now as we learn more and more. Darwin didn't know anything about cells. He just knew there was a small building blocks. He didn't know anything about microbiology. And as we learn more about that, it becomes more and more clear that the theories that Darwin had about the evolution, the mutations, building up with natural selection, are not possible. And so there's a big rush on in science, the materialistic side of science, that says we got to come up with a solution to this. We need a new theory. And so far they don't have that. There's a thing called theistic evolution. We talked about that. Theistic evolution, to me, is really hard to understand. You'll hear about it probably. I've known a lot of very smart people that I know personally that say, I don't know about Darwinism, but I just believe in theistic evolution. And what it seems to do is it seems to be, as much as I can learn from the people that promote it, it accepts Darwinian evolution as understood by materialists, but they add that God's in there somewhere. And that's kind of the problem. Is, well, what did God do? God doesn't seem to be necessary in Darwinian evolution. I've heard them explain this. I've heard, people that are pretty well educated in this subject of theistic evolution, and they will describe Darwinian evolution exactly as a materialistic scientist would, and then they just kind of add in there, but God's in there somewhere. Also, it's going to be not go well, I think, for these folks when it turns out that Darwinian evolution is not true, is not really the way things work. A big part of this theistic evolution thing will fall apart. So it's not something that I feel too warm about. I mean, I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to say, yes, we're not putting our heads in the sand. We're not anti-science. We'll accept the science, but, we know that God's in there somewhere, wink, wink. Well, maybe, but it's not something that I am very comfortable with. Science can help confirm biblical teaching. We talked about that. Confirms that the universe had a beginning. We talked about the Big Bang. Now, there are people who will say we don't want to believe in the Big Bang because it sells things, it's all materialistic and so forth. Putting that aside, for centuries, millennia, the scientists and philosophers believed that the universe was eternal. And the Bible said, no, it was created. And when the Big Bang came along, a lot of scientists did not like it. In fact, calling it the Big Bang was kind of a derogatory term. And so really science confirmed what the Bible said, that the universe had a beginning. Beyond that, the details we're going to disagree on. We may disagree on the interpretation, but science did confirm what the Bible said and had said for a long time. It also tells us that the cosmos, meaning everything, is incredibly fine-tuned. We talked about that in class. If you changed almost any of these constants in the universe, the force of gravity, the nuclear strong force, things like that, speed of light, life would not be possible as we know it here. And it also tells us, as I mentioned, that Darwin's evolution idea can't be achieved at the molecular level. In other words, as you look at it at the molecular level, you see it's not working the way you thought it did. And I've mentioned a lot about very well-educated people in science and so forth, and making these statements. But to keep in mind, John Lennox, the Irishman, says, nonsense is nonsense, even when spoken and when said by world-famous science. And that's true. Keep in mind that scientists and most people that have PhDs in a subject have devoted a great deal of their life to studying science. And they maybe haven't studied theology, philosophy, logic at all, just science. And so they say things that they don't really have as broad enough of a context for it. They haven't looked at all the places to get answers. They're just looking for science for answers. And it comes out being what we would consider to be, somewhat nonsensical. if science can't answer every question, because there are those, it's called scientism, there are those who would say science can answer every question we have. Not true. As we've seen recently, science can't seem to even answer the question of do face masks work or not? And if so, how do they work? There have been all sorts of theories that we've seen about how this coronavirus spreads, how it doesn't spread, what the effects are, etc. And point being that scientists have a lot of different theories, a lot of different potential ideas, but they can't answer definitively every question that we have. And so, like the existence of God. So where do you go for those? You go to religion, theology, philosophy, logic. There are things that science can't answer, and those are the big issues, I would say, the existence of God. Science isn't looking for an answer to that. Science doesn't look for miracles to happen. If they can't measure it and see it happening over and over and over, then they believe it simply doesn't happen. Or if a miracle happened, somebody didn't collect the evidence correctly. So that's one of the problems with looking only to science. Science can do a lot of good things. Medicine, helps keep us well, cures us of diseases. Technology helps us communicate, helps us travel. But there are a lot of things that science can't answer, and they tend to be things of a spiritual nature, of a religious nature. And so the point is, we just want to use science where it's appropriate, and then turn to theology and our religious beliefs for the rest of the answers. Good statement that I like here is by Charles Campbell. We're not asking people to believe what the Bible says about God just because it says so. No, we want people to believe the Bible because of the wealth of good evidence that has demonstrated the Bible to be trustworthy. Hundreds of fulfilled prophecies, thousands of archaeological discoveries, numerous details in the Bible that have been corroborated by extra-biblical or historical sources, and so on. I think that's a good statement of what we're about in apologetics. And then lastly, most recently, we've studied world religions. We studied Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism. Quick review of that. The basic Christian teaching is Christ died, he was buried, he was raised, he appeared to many, he is God. We studied Mormonism. And the reason we studied Christianity and reviewed Christianity there, by the way, is that we want to make sure that we know what we believe so that we can contrast it as we are exposed to other religions. So like we talked about, Secret Service agents study real dollar bills, real $100 bills, so that when they see a counterfeit, they'll see that it's a difference. They don't study counterfeits first and then try to figure out what's real. You study the real thing first, then you can detect counterfeits. That's what we've done with Christian teaching and the evidence for Christianity and so forth. So as we get to Mormonism, we find that the Jesus of Mormonism and the God of Mormonism is entirely different than the God of Christianity. We look at Buddhism and find that in some cases it's actually an atheistic religion, in that it's got this sort of force thing in the universe, not a personal God, more a philosophy of how to live your life and how to get through life and relieve suffering in life. Judaism, we agree with them on the Old Testament. We agree with them as to who God is, but they have not made it all the way to accepting Jesus as Messiah. And they are involved in a lot of works and traditions that they have to do to please God. Islam came along after Christianity by a few hundred years. There's really, some of the claims they make are demonstrably false. They claim that the Quran is perfect. It was exactly as it was given to Muhammad in a cave by an angel. There's never been but one version of the Quran, and it's perfect down to the last comma. It turns out there's a lot of evidence that's been unearthed that says that's just not true. Islam is also something where you just do it the best you can. You hope when you face God at judgment that you will find that your good deeds have outweighed your bad deeds and that you'll be admitted into paradise. They do have Jesus in their religion, but Jesus as a prophet, not as God. They believe that Jesus is just a prophet. They believe he is in heaven today and that he will come back and announce that he is a Muslim, and then he will die then. I'm not sure why that is true. But in any case, not anything remotely close to Christianity. Hinduism is the religion that's got this one God force, this Brahman, with all sorts of, I guess you might call them avatars or other manifestations of God. Some people say that they have like 300 million gods. Others will say that's all the same God showing up in different ways. We talked about that Krishna is one of their favorite gods, and they believe, like the Buddhists, in this circular view of time. You're going to live this life. Depending on how much good and bad you do, your karma will dictate what you come back as. You're going to be, when you die, your soul is going to get into another body, come back, and you might be another human moving up in the sort of the pecking order of humans. You might start out as a poor beggar, and then you might move up to a tradesman, and then you might move up into a royal family. As long as you're doing well. If you're not doing well, then you'll start going the other way. And I believe you can even go back into becoming other species, other animals, cows, things like that. Maybe even roaches, depending on how good or bad you're doing. Then there's New Age, which is kind of an umbrella thing that just covers a wide range of topics. It kind of a hodgepodge of Buddhism, Hinduism, mysticism, transcendentalism, Gnosticism, paganism, pantheism, occultism, witchcraft, meditation, yoga, channeling, sorcery, reincarnation, and so forth. They like to think about crystals and pyramid power, things like that. Just kind of a thing to make them, I think they want to say they're spiritual. They're looking for something beyond the material world, but it's not well defined and not really well, I think, thought out, if you will. Christianity alone among them is the one that is deeply rooted in historical fact. Only Jesus makes clear claims to deity. Only Jesus has a perfect moral nature. You remember Krishna was kind of a ladies' man and kind of a rogue. In Hinduism, only Jesus claims to do something to change your state before God. All the other religions, you have to do the work. It's up to you to do good works and do more good things than bad things. Jesus claims to do something to change your state before God. He paid the price. He conquered death. He's the way that we get into heaven through what he did, not what we do. Jesus did things only God could do. He forgave sins. He accepted worship. He answered prayer. He raised the dead. He judged humanity. He did miracles. And in the Quran, Muhammad actually says and confirms that he never did any miracles. He never did anything in the way of a miracle, which is kind of interesting because most prophets have something, some sort of a sign that they would give to people that they have this some special anointing from God. Muhammad did not have that in Islam. In any case, so Christianity is substantially different from the others. For one thing that strikes me a lot is if you could find one thing, one solid piece of evidence that Jesus was not resurrected from the dead, then Christianity just collapses. Whereas in Hinduism, Buddhism, and a lot of the others, and certainly in New Age, if something's proven false, they may just reject the evidence that it's proven false, or they may just say it doesn't matter, it's still a good idea, we're still going to pursue what we're going to pursue here. So in Christianity, we have an assurance. If we accept Jesus as Lord, repent of our sins, we're going to heaven. In all the others, you're not sure. You can do the best you can. You can hope you're a good guy and everything, but how do you know what's good enough? How do you know how much of good is good enough? And we have grace. Grace is the thing that we have that's unique in Christianity. I want to talk about grace next. Okay, I want to remind you of, we're going to talk about grace, but I want to use my raffle as a teaching aid here in that. So we've had the raffle going on for both semesters, been going on since I started. In the raffle, you can win a $5 card for Chick-fil-A or In-N-Out Burger. We're out of Chick-fil-A's now, so all we have are In-N-Out. And we have rules. There's a lot of rules you got to follow. You get a ticket when you turn in your homework, when you participate in a role play with me, when you find a spelling error on Mr. Sean's materials. And I know that spelling's spelled wrong just to get you excited, but it's too late. The raffle is over. How do you win the raffle? You turn in your homework, you fill out your the ticket, and then you hope for the best. You have to be present to win in class. We're not doing that on the Zoom meetings. And you can't win 2 weeks in a row. And so you keep looking for words that are spelled incorrectly, and you try to get a raffle ticket. You wait, it's time for the raffle. Somebody reaches in the box. You may have a lot of tickets in there. You may have one ticket in there. You've got a chance, but you really don't have any assurance you're going to win. You don't know for sure. You don't know how much is enough. How many? Some of you, a couple of you, have really gone to town on spelling errors and found. I put a lot of spelling errors in on purpose just to see who's reading the slides. But some of you have just gone beyond that and found spelling errors I didn't know I had. and you've gotten lots of tickets for that. So you're probably feeling pretty good about yourself that you've got a lot of tickets in the raffle box, but it's a random choice. You know, somebody's going to reach their hand in there, and you've got a better chance than others, but not a sure thing. You just don't know for sure. Well, let's talk about, and that's kind of how it is with these other religions. You're trying to follow the rules. You're trying to do all the things you need to do, and yet you're not sure at any point, when have I done enough? And what if I've done just enough and then I do one bad thing? And how bad is bad? And are all bad things equal? Are all good things equal? How does this really work? In Christianity, we have grace. And grace is the free and unmerited favor of God as manifested in the salvation of sinners and the bestowal of blessings. What that means is it's free. It doesn't cost us anything. It's unmerited. We don't earn it. It's grace. It's God's grace. It's how we get salvation. It's an undeserved favor. It's given, not earned. It's amazing, as it says in the song, "Amazing Grace." That's why John Newton was so amazed. He had really been a bad guy, and that God could save him. And there's nothing he could do. The things he had done were terrible. He was a slave trader, and he had done lots of terrible things in his life. And he found God, and he found salvation. And that's what made him write the song, "Amazing Grace," that saved a wretch like me. Only grace could have done that. I don't think he could have earned his way out of that hole. Well, today I'm going to offer each of you a free In-N-Out Burger gift card worth $5 to illustrate what grace is. If we were in class, the way I do this in class is I get to this point and I say, I'm going to show you what grace is. And grace is I'm going to hand each one of you a free card. You didn't do anything to earn it. I don't care how much homework you turned in or how little homework you turned in. I don't care if you ever role played or didn't role play. I don't care if you ever found a spelling error or not. I'm going to give each one of you a free gift card through grace. You didn't earn it. You don't have to do anything to get it. It's just yours. Now, I offer it to you, and you only have to accept it. And in class, what I will do is hold out my hand with the card in it, and you pick it up. If you want it, you take it. If you don't want it, you say, pass, I don't want it. I don't force you to take it. You can refuse it. Now, the way I'm going to do it here today is, this is a little tricky, I think, because I can't see you all individually, and everybody's not even on the Zoom cast. What I'm going to do is I've written a letter to each one of you, and I'm going to mail your card to you today with your grace card to In-N-Out Burger. And obviously, if you don't want it, you can refuse it. But I don't think many of you will. But you'll get your card in the mail probably later this week. And think of that when you get that, what grace is. It's not having to work like in the old system, in the old agreement we had with the little jar that we put your tickets in. You had to work hard to try to get your tickets in there and then hope that somebody would pull your ticket out and that you would win. Grace was where we announced at the beginning, the agreement is you're all going to get it. All you have to do is accept it. That's the difference between grace, between Christianity, and these other world religions that you'll see. That's good news. It's good news for us and good news for others as well. And so I hope you would keep in mind that it's really important that we share this with other people, that they understand not only is Christianity, in my view, a better system, if you will, than these other religions, but it's true. If Christianity wasn't true, that would be just kind of ho-hum. Well, Christianity came up with a better idea, this grace thing, that's nice, but it's no more true than any of the other religions. But the fact is, the evidence supports that it is true. Could not be better. It's true, and it's a wonderful system, and one for which, how could we not worship the God that gives us that kind of system? Well, we're done. All I can say is thank you very much for being part of the class. Well done for your participation. I pray that you will have gotten at least one or two things out of this class that you can use for the rest of your life. I pray you'll keep studying the Bible, studying apologetics, and helping others to realize that the truth of the Bible is really true. It's not just a story, and it's an important story. You will make a difference in the world. You are a masterpiece. Each one of you is a masterpiece. You're created by the Master, God Himself. Anything created by a master is considered a masterpiece, and so you are. So I pray that you'll go out, change the world. If you have any questions anytime now or in the next year or so, whenever, feel free to reach out and give me a call, stop and see me on campus, email me, text me. I'd be more than happy to point you in the right direction and help you find answers that you're looking for. So I have really enjoyed being with you. I'm really bummed that we had to do the rest of this by video and I wasn't able to be in class with you, but it is what it is. And I'd like to leave you with a blessing that's one of my favorites from Numbers 6:24 to 26. May the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen. Give them heaven, guys.